Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our part three of the Queen's Passage Love Yourself Standard. My name is Nakia Harris, and joining me today is Trelawney Lynn Gardner. Make sure I get that straight. And so, if you've been following along, we've been discussing like I mentioned, loving yourself and making it a standard. And what does that look like? And so we're still continuing that series and we're going to continue the conversation today. Last week, we were talking about specifically with relationships and sometimes how it can, be a really interesting slope to make sure that we are keeping to our standard, making sure we're not the ones that are, at the short end of the stick in the deal. And again, these are all relationships. So we're not just talking about, you know, family
Mm.
relationships or love relationships. This could be workplace relationships, etc. So anything that we're discussing can, be applicable in any of those areas. But what we're going to do today is continue the conversation again. And most likely, we're still going to start from the vantage point of dealing with relationships, the personal ones, and expand outside of that. And so, as our conversation goes on today, if there's anything that strikes you, or if anything you want to hear Trelawney, elaborate on, or if you want to talk to her directly, make sure you reach out to her. She is on Facebook. She has her Facebook group, The Queen's Passage. You can definitely reach out to her there, and she would be more than happy to continue the conversation.
Mhm.
Also, if you have specific questions that you would like answered, maybe it doesn't have to be directly one-on-one, but something that you would like discussed here on, the show during our conversation, email her. You can send her a DM on Facebook and she goes through all her messages and we can share that as well. Or if you want to send something to me specifically at chatwithnikia@gmail.com, you can do that as well. So, without further ado, we're just going to jump into this conversation today. Again, talking about the self love standard and how that looks in its various ways within relationships. So, Trilani, before we do jump in, why don't you give us again another snippet of what does this standard mean to you and why is it really so important that we continue to have this conversation?
Okay. The self-love standard is the way that you're going to love yourself, period. It is just that simple and that complicated at the same time. So it's how you handle yourself, how you handle failures, perceived failures, how you handle heartbreak or bad news, a job you don't like, friendships that aren't fulfilling, any kind of anything to do with you. If it includes you, it's going to affect your standard. So if you love yourself enough to hold your boundaries, and you're going to find that there's not quite so much fuckery in your life. There's not going to be so much, people pushing and pulling at you, trying to force you to do things or guilt you or persuade you in. You'll be able to stand a little bit more concretely on your beliefs and you'll be able to say yes or no, but from a good place.
Awesome, awesome. And I think that's a good way to segue into the conversation today. Again, still talking about the idea of, like you said, being able to stand your ground and
Mm-hmm.
continuing to love yourself despite what the dynamic of the relationship or situation is. And so sometimes, especially with personal relationships where the slope gets a little bit more slippery for us, it's not always clear as to where to draw the line. Like, at what point does it become like, okay, this is not working? And I think sometimes even people may get to the point where it's like, well, relationships are about, conceding and coming to agreements and things like that. But where would you say, Treylani, that it becomes now the negotiations become one-sided or uneven, or maybe moving into a place where it's questioning how we're showing up for ourselves from that self-love standard?
Absolutely. If you started out in any kind of relationship, it doesn't matter if this is a romantic relationship, parent and child, or siblings, or best friends, it doesn't matter. So if you're in a relationship and you are on the same page, and for some reason, one person or the other, let's just use the other because it's easier in the first person. So the other kind of steps to the wayside. And you're wondering what happened because I'm holding the course and I'm where I need to be and I'm where I agreed we're going to be. but you're floundering over here. Now, this is where normally we would negotiate in a relationship of any kind, right? Like maybe that person's having a hard time and you need to ante up a little more than they can at the moment, and that's perfectly okay. However, you also need to set yourself a guideline. So you don't want to overdo that. You do not want to be the person who is constantly making changes or constantly making allowances or, emptying from your cup all the time, and this other person is just on the side doing whatever they want and minimal crumbs to your life. You don't want that, because what's going to happen is you're going to run yourself completely out. You're going to be exhausted. Your self-esteem will take a hit. Your self-love will take a hit. Your standard is going to fall, and it's all going to happen without you realizing it. It will be so subtle until it's not. So when they start making negotiations, because of course, right, they're going to try and make a negotiation of like, well, I can't stand where we were. It's not working right now, or I don't want that anymore. So I want you to come meet me over here. But what happens is, if that negotiation that they are offering you, because choices are good, we like choices, and we can always change our mind at any time. That's allowed on either end. But if they're offering you a negotiation where they are the only benefit, like the only person who's benefiting from this negotiation, that's not okay. And it is absolutely all right that you get upset about it, that you feel bad about it, that you get sad about it, or that you say, you know what, fuck that. I'm just stepping right out of this whole thing. I know that we had a contract here of something that we agreed on, but you have broke that and stepped over here, and you're asking me to go too far off my path for it. So it's okay to step back, to release yourself from it and say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And really watch, because even those negotiations, if you are a softer person, if you're a person who leads from your heart, and I lead from my heart quite a bit. So if you find yourself in that and you give a little more and you give a little more and it doesn't feel great, but you're like, okay, I can handle this, right? This can't last forever. Something's going to give. So you give, and you notice that it's really not coming back. Nothing is being given back to you, and you feel worse. That is your biggest clue that it's time for you now to step back. You don't need to give from your heart freely like that anymore. You don't need to give of your time, of your voice, of your energy. You don't even need to honor any past agreeing that you did, because they've already broken it. So when it no longer feels aligned for you, when it no longer feels right, and you've expressed it, and it is met with indifference, or it is met with, well, that's too bad because this is what I need, feel free just to leave that. Feed into yourself a little more. Go somewhere where you are recognized and loved and celebrated. Listen to some music that lifts you up. Anything, a movie, a feel-good movie, but refill your cup. Because when we are running low in our cup, we tend to make bad decisions for ourselves.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. And that also highlights the other point I think we discussed previously too, about being aware.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get so caught up in just day to day, everything we're doing, like you're not even aware that you're constantly conceding. I know,
Mhm.
just, for anyone who's a parent and you had that time in your life where you focused really on your kids, and maybe you didn't always do your hair. Maybe you didn't
Mhm.
always tend to yourself first. You tended to the child or children. You years can go by before you realize, oh my goodness, I haven't done,
Yes.
this in years and that in years. So how would you say that can play out if within a different type of relationship? Granted, you can't just kick your kids to the curb and say, okay, grow
No.
up, 2-year old, you need to get a job and be more responsible, wash your own clothes. You can't say that to your kid, right? So how does that
Uh-huh.
work when you're in a similar scenario where you just haven't even picked your head up to notice and you see something like that happening?
Well, that is when you're going to ask for some help, right? So that's not something you're going to fix on your own. You need some outside help, somebody who can come in and take care of the 2-year-old for you for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, an hour and a half. It doesn't matter what it is. And then you are going to take that time and completely remove yourself away from the child, the house, the whatever that is on your to-do list. And you are just going to focus on self.
Mm.
So whether that is you need a massage, you're going to go to the spa, go get your hair done, right? Paint your toenails. It doesn't matter what, go for a drive in the country. Maybe driving is your thing and you just want the windows down and the music up and the hair in your face, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're going to do. You will take that allotted time. Nothing else in the entire world matters except you. And then you slowly start to fill yourself again. And you come back in contact with, what do I enjoy in life? What made me feel so fucking delicious that I wanted to get up and do stuff, right? And once you get back into that, it's going to be easier to maintain. You're going to find new boundaries with your little 2-year-old, right? Maybe bedtime is going to be a half an hour earlier, to allot yourself a half an hour of downtime before you have to go to sleep and get up and go to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, early bedtime sound good to me.
Absolutely. Maybe they stay in the bathtub another 10 minutes and don't leave them, but sit with them and you bring a book in.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to let them play and splash and carry on, and you take 15 minutes for yourself. It's not selfish, it's actually needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it's great to hear the reminders of that, to take the time, because that's also what's going to deepen our own self-awareness. If we don't take a minute to really assess, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, how we're, how things are building up within us, how can we really expect another person to understand what we're going through,
Mm-hmm.
or what we're thinking? People aren't telepathic to know that, our bosses, or, our partners, or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
they're not going to tune in to that. So once we take the time and really be able to make those assessments, it opens up space. And so thank you for the reminder to, yes,
Mm-hmm.
sit, not add something else to your list to do,
That's right.
just sit.
You're
And,
going to pause your list. I mean, that the world is not going to end if you pause your list for a day. Pause it for half an hour, right? The thing that needs to get done still needs to get done. It's not going
Mhm,
to go anywhere.
right.
It can't fight you. But if you run yourself down, you're not getting to that list anyway.
True. And I think sometimes we lose that. We think, oh my God, if I don't, everything's going
Mm.
to crash and burn or go to hell in a handbasket. So
That's right.
we have this, we create this super sense of urgency to,
Yeah.
be on top of this list versus um, pausing and taking a minute. So speaking to that too, because again, we do have to take it inside before we can really take it outside. When that conversation starts to get a little hairy about this list, or
Mm-hmm.
do I take a minute to assess this relationship? Because the conversation can get hairy, because it's like, okay, if I think about this relationship too long, maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to come up with some good stuff. If I think about the situation too long, it's going to, you know, create, these new thoughts that maybe I'm not ready to deal with. What speak to the courage, I think, if that's the word, that comes behind being willing to sit and listen.
Well, you really only have two choices. You are either going to hear yourself from yourself what you're needing, or you're just going to keep diving down the dark way. So you're either going to run yourself in the ground, or you're going to find a way to smile. And so it does take courage to look at things, and it does take courage to step away from things. And, it takes massive amounts of bravery on your end to be able to let go of things, even if that means in a child aspect where, hey, I've never had a babysitter before. I'm so scared to let somebody else take control of my child. What if they hurt them, right?
Mm.
You can have other people check in, you can have monitors, you can have cameras in your house. There's so many things you can do now to make sure that that safety aspect is there for you, to give you the security aspect that you can go and carry on for yourself. But it does take a bravery for you to take that first initial step. When you take the first step, the next one's easier, and it just gets easier after that. So if you can't pull into yourself first to see where the impact could be or how you could be worth it, and you're stuck outside of yourself, that's okay. Then do it reverse. So if I don't take care of myself, if I don't fill my cup, I'm going to be cranky as hell, and that is going to spill over to the people in my life. I'm going to be angry at my best friend. I'm going to be snarly at my roommates. I'm going to, yell at my husband. I'm going to discipline my kids too much, or I'm not going to be there. When is the last time I smiled? When is the last time I felt joy about anything? And go from there. If you don't want to impact their world negatively, then you must take care of yourself. Once you start doing that, naturally your self-love is going to start to flow, and you're going to be like, you know what, this feels pretty damn good. So I don't think that it's so much them anymore. I think I just want to feel some goodness here. So you know what? Hey, honey, you're going to watch our children for like a half an hour. I have something to do. I'll be back, right? Maybe you're just going to go in your own bathtub and shut the door. Put on some music and put a towel at the bottom of the door and block out all the noise, because it doesn't matter. He can handle it, right? He's an adult. That's dad. Or your sister, the babysitter. It doesn't matter what it is. Now, in a relationship, if his crankiness, I'll say he because I'm a girl, so if his crankiness is leading into here and it's hitting me too hard, well, I know obviously he is not valuing his self-love standard. He's not filling into his self-love standard, which is draining mine, because now I'm compensating for both ends. Or if I'm not putting in, then I'm draining him because he's compensating for both, right? And again, you're going to look at those negotiations. How long is one person going to take the extra weight in any of these situations? And find what feels good for you, and not what feels good for you thinking of them, but what feels good for you thinking of you. Because again, we're going to go back. You can't put people before you. If you are not okay, you cannot take care of the person in front of you.
Bottom line, bottom line. And that point you're making about, if we're not in a good space, then how can we be in a good space for anyone else? That helps remove that guilt that sometimes,
Yes.
we might feel like, if we say, okay, I need to take some time for myself. I'm not, fully resourced at this moment. I can't really make this decision. So I need a minute. Instead of feeling guilty, instead of feeling like, oh my goodness, I didn't have this backbone, whatever that means. I don't even know where this stuff comes from. I feel like we create
Yes.
these crazy thought processes when it's not even the case. So for you to say, yes, if you don't fill your cup, you can't fill anyone else's. And I like take it a step further and say, if your cup is cracked and chipped and needs attention, you can't be filled in order to fill someone
That's
else.
right.
So it's so important. Like you said, it comes back to self. It all starts with us as the individual to
Mm.
make the assessments, to be aware, and the tips you gave about having these conversations. Like, okay, look, I need this minute. Okay, yes, I need this time. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, 3-4 hours. It'd be that bad. You on to bed a half hour earlier tonight. I need these extra few minutes. And it starts there. And as that muscle grows, I think we become more creative with how to, you know, not even pencil, pen those times
Yes.
in. Because like you said, we start to see like, ooh, this was really needed. This is this is a non-negotiable.
Well, our brains and our systems, they're not that complicated. They're looking for the next best thing that feels good. So if you just start giving yourself things that feel good, and I mean that are safe, like, don't get off the rail here. So you start doing the things that are good for you and that feel really good, your brain is automatically going to start to ask for it.
Mm.
Right? And then your body's going to start to ask for it. And then the thoughts are going to start to go, hey, when's the last time I felt pretty good?
Yeah.
I think I want to do this. And just start going through the list of things that maybe you would like. And you're going to know. You're going to get a whole body reaction. Your mind is going to light up. And you're going to be like, oh, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm missing. So that's what I'm going to go do.
Right.
And again, ask for outside help if you can't get it done yourself.
Yeah.
Asking for help is also part of the love yourself standard, right? We have to be able to ask for help when we need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it took me a while to learn that,
Yeah,
but that ask is right up there with recognizing that when we need something, it's okay to speak up about it. It's okay.
absolutely.
It is so okay. And so
You are
this,
allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be loud and proud. You are allowed to do what you need to do for you. So if that means that, you're asking for help every second day, just go ask for help.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really, 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 really important, because seriously, it's life, isn't like we didn't create the children on our own. We're not
Yeah.
running the company on our own. We're not
Yeah.
doing a lot of things single-handedly, leaping from buildings in a bound. That's really not how it works. There's always a joint effort in anything that we have
Yes.
going on. So there's really, again, no reason not to ask. So awesome, awesome. Once again, you know, another tidbit to add to, the process as we're, taking this one step at a time. So any wrap up thought that you'd like to leave with them today as we close out this session?
Well, I think that we are leaning back too much into, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to affect somebody else, right? So I know I just said that if their actions are affecting you too much to break that, but I want to go a little bit further than that. So I did a thing today on TikTok with the Reels where I was saying, we need to stop with the niceties. We have to be genuine. So
Mhm.
when you're out, smile like you mean it. If you're shaking a hand, shake it with enthusiasm. If you're going to give somebody a hug, hold on just a little longer so it actually impacts them.
Mm.
Start living on purpose. Find a purpose in your step, find a purpose in your breath, find a purpose in what you're doing in any moment. If you need rest, rest with purpose. If you're stepping out of your house, step fully out of your house, step fully into your body and just get the hell on with it, right? Don't take the world so seriously. I know there's some serious things. We've had it here in my city the last couple days has been really sad,
Mm.
but that's all the more reason that your joy needs to be out there.
Right.
And you can feel your joy and pump it up when you pump up your standard.
Indeed. Indeed. Raising that standard and living
Yes.
full out. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing again another part of the series. And thank you everyone who's watching and joining us even later on after the session is over. And again, if you have questions or if you want to connect with Trilani, she's on Facebook under Lonnie Gardner. You can also look at her or message her on Facebook. She also has the group, the Queen's Passage, on Facebook as well, where it's a women's group. But again, she's willing to share words of wisdom, and she offers a lot of advice and things of that nature and talks on different topics. As she mentioned, she also does her reels. So always willing to share information and help, in whatever way she sees fit. So we're wrapping up today. Thank you all again for joining us. Feel free to tune in again next week as we continue the series. And again, if you have questions, reach out, send them to us. We definitely want, to make this an interactive process and making sure that we're providing information that's helpful for you. So all of you have a great day and see you soon.
Bye bye. Thank you.